Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founder is William Molineux, no image known. And to help us talk about William Molineux, we have a very special guest, J.L. Bell is with us. Mr. Bell, thank you so much for being here.
Gladly.
Now,
Glad to be here, Jason.
right off the bat, I have to apologize. Yesterday I called you R.L. Bell in my haste and excitement to announce you, so I do apologize for that. But let's talk about William Molineux. So, tell us, what was William Molineux doing when things started getting a little ugly with Great Britain in the 1760s?
Well, basically, there's this stereotype of Samuel Adams that has been out there for a long time of this malcontent who just was upset at everything, all sorts of authority, and would wander the streets of Boston with thugs behind him, threatening violence at people. And that's not Samuel Adams. But that is kind of William Molineux. That he was the man who led the crowd in the streets. He was the man who oversaw physical protests against importers and other people he felt were getting in the way of the Whig or Patriot cause. He was, for instance, at the Boston Tea Party, in the meeting at the Old South Meeting House that led up to the actual destruction of the tea, there were thousands of people watching. And all the Patriot leadership, all the Whig leaders were up near the pulpit leading the meeting, and a Crown informant was there, and the Crown informant listed in his report exactly who was there, including Samuel Adams, John Hancock, Dr. Joseph Warren, Dr. Thomas Young, William Cooper, and so on and so on and so on. And the one guy who didn't show up there, who wasn't visible, very visible with an alibi at the Old South Meeting House, was William Molineux, because he was almost certainly down at the docks overseeing the actual destruction of the tea. He was the hands-on, street-level Patriot leader. Now, what makes that so unusual is that he wasn't from an old New England family. He wasn't a Congregationalist. He was, in fact, an Anglican, and most Massachusetts Anglicans sided with the Crown. He was an upper-class merchant. He was, in fact, born in Britain, in Wolverhampton, and only came to Boston when he was about age 30, I think. That's the earliest evidence that he was there. So he did not have the ties to the old New England society that Samuel Adams and most of the other New England Whigs had. So the idea that he would become not only a patriot, but actually one of the very top leaders of the Patriots from 1767 to 1774 is rather unusual for William Molineux.
Now, he's, as we said, not very well known, as many founders on this channel are, but one of the reasons for that seems to be that he does pass away fairly early. Could you speak a little bit about his early death and, first of all, why he died, and what do we know about his death, and the effect that may have had on him as an historical figure?
Well, one of the reasons, he is indeed forgotten. I think I mentioned to you by email that of all the Boston Patriots, he's the only one, the most prominent one, who does not have an entry in the Dictionary of American Biography. And one reason for that is that he didn't write any sort of political philosophy, any sort of articles, any sort of essays, the way even people like Dr. Thomas Young and Dr. Joseph Warren, who did other things, they also wrote in newspapers. He hardly ever did. I think I found a couple of letters and one newspaper advertisement from him. And so we don't have a lot of his papers. So we just don't have a lot of documentary evidence about what he was thinking at any time. So that's one reason why it's sort of hard to get a handle on him. The other reason is that he, as the street leader, he was seen as less respectable than some of the others. So, for instance, John Adams, who so much shaped our memory of the Revolution, the anecdotes he left about Molineux tend to be about Molineux as hot-tempered and Molineux as having to be taken down a peg by James Otis. So he was not lionized the way some others were. Then, yes, possibly the most important thing is that he died in October 1774, before the war, before the establishment of the federal government, which is how most of the founders really get remembered. And in fact, some people might argue that it doesn't even count as a founder since he didn't uh, survive through the founding. Now, that may be true, but he did more than practically anybody to bring on that founding. One of the things I'm doing now, with the research I'm doing now, is about how in the last weeks before his death, William Molineux was buying cannon in Boston and sending it out into the countryside so that the Massachusetts Patriots there could wage war against the soldiery in Boston. And he was doing this before the Massachusetts Provincial Congress was even formed. So he was jumping the gun there, literally.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's so much to unpack there.
Now,
I was just going to acknowledge that of all the
now,
people you mentioned taking him down a peg, James Otis seems like the last person who would be telling people to calm down.
Yes, you'd think so, but James Otis, he may have had bipolar disorder. He's had ups and downs, and what this anecdote that John Adams told was about how Molineux was coming into the club and arguing about how it was so unfair and people were doing terrible things to him and getting in his way. And Otis was, have you noticed that I have a dent in my head? Have you noticed that I have lost half my business? That was the anecdote. In fact, they're both volatile personalities. There was a moment in 1770 when Molineux wants to lead a crowd to put pressure on the governor's sons who happen to be living in his house. So literally, he would be leading hundreds of people to the Thomas Hutchinson's house, Thomas Hutchinson being the acting governor, the symbol of the king. That's as close to rebellion as you can get in the British Empire. And many of the lawyers, Josiah Quincy and others in the meeting, were calling out and saying, no, this you cannot do. You must not do that. That will just make us look bad. And Molineux was actually, according to various witnesses there, threatening to commit suicide if they didn't let him do this, drawing his hand across his throat. And so this all leads into his death in October 1774, which is very, very mysterious. It was rather unexpected. And there were conflicting, contrary rumors about this. The circumstances leading up to this, war was coming. Most people thought Molineux was obviously at the forefront. He was resisting the British the Crown legal system by refusing to sit on a jury, which put him in legal jeopardy. He was also, as I said, collecting cannon. And for the last few years, he had been in charge, or sort of putting himself in charge of this enterprise of employing the poor of Boston in spinning, so that they could make yarn that then could be woven into cloth, so that Massachusetts could make its own cloth and not have to rely on Great Britain. This was an old idea. Other people had tried it. It had always lost money. He felt that he had the way to do it. And so he was sinking a lot of money into spinning wheels and such. Now, the problem with this is it wasn't his money. He was in charge of the rents for a certain man named Charles Ward Apthorpe, who had moved to New York. And Apthorpe was a supporter of the Crown. In early October 1774, a letter arrived from New York from the general in charge there to General Gage, his superior in Boston, written in French, which very few people read, saying that Charles Ward Apthorpe was about to come to Boston, but keep this secret because he wants to find out what Molineux is doing with his money. And 2 weeks later, Molineux is dead. So there are immediate rumors that he has committed suicide. There are also rumors that British officers have poisoned him. And then there's always the possibility that because of stress, because of any number of things of 18th century lifestyle, he died of natural causes. But boom, he was out of the picture. And that is another reason why we do not remember William Molineux.
Right, because this is in October 1774, so more famously, this is exactly the same time the First Continental Congress is taking place in Philadelphia. I would be surprised if Sam Adams and John Hancock even returned from Philadelphia by this point.
Well, Hancock wasn't part of the Massachusetts delegation
Oh,
yet.
I'm
but
sorry.
yes,
Yeah.
Samuel Adams was off in Philadelphia. Thomas Cushing, the Speaker of the Massachusetts House. I think Robert Treat Paine already. John Adams.
Right.
So some of the very top leaders were off in Philadelphia, and Dr. Thomas Young had been driven out of town by threats or at least fears of British officers attacking him.
Right.
So really, one of the things that in this very short stretch of the fall of 1774, many of the top echelon of leaders in the Boston Whigs are taken out, are removed from action. Either they are too busy elsewhere, or in the case of William Molineux, they were suddenly dead. And that's why so much of the responsibilities in the spring of 1775 fell to Dr. Joseph Warren.
Well, that's fascinating. Mr. J.L. Bell, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. For anyone watching, J.L. Bell has written, he writes a blog. It's down in the description below. He is, from my perspective, the Twitter authority, at least in revolutionary New England. Check out the link below. And check out his book, also linked below. There it is, whammy, always on hand. The Road to Concord, how four stolen cannons, ignited the Revolutionary War.
Ignited the Revolutionary
get the whole
War.
title.
These are not the cannon Molineux was involved in. I had a whole chapter, a long chapter in this book about Molineux, and it just took up too much space, so it's gone.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Bell, please come back and tell us about all these other founders. You keep bringing up Dr. Thomas Young, who we would love to hear about here. So when you get the opportunity, you come on back and tell us about all the random founders that I've missed.
Terrific.
Thank you so
and
much
you
for
keep
being
busy too.
Founder fans, like I said, that was William Molineux, and thank you again to J.L. Bell, who I mistakenly said R.L. Bell yesterday. Thank you to J.L. Bell for being so kind and talking to us today. Thank you for coming. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more American Revolution content all week long. Tomorrow I'll be talking to Robert Allison from the Revolution 250 program, and we are going to have a great time then. We have a great time every day. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll be back with that other founder for you tomorrow.